Gone Freaks. Gone Freaks at the beginning of Hunter x Hunter. During the Hunter exam arc, right? But I ain't going to. Gon said he ain't gonna not become a hunter. He needs to. He was excited. He had to catch that fish that was hard to catch, right? He caught that fish, and then he was like, "Hey, I'm gonna go become a hunter like my dad, and eventually I'm gonna find my dad too. It's gonna be fun. I had to leave his aunt Mito behind. You know, she sent him off on his way, and then he got on the ship. He got on the ship, and he met Kurapika and Leorio. They then went and they got to the first stage of the hunter exams, where they had to then run. They met Killua in the first stage. They ran and ran and ran, and then they got to the forest. They got to the forest, Gon Freaks was able to figure out some things. He's good at tracking people through like scent and other things. He knows about animals and their behavioral patterns and shit like that. He's a hunter like that. He gets it from his dad too. But he is, doing these hunter exams. He carries a fishing pole with him. He uses it as a weapon too. Eventually, they get to a point where there's like a few contestants left. And they fought against prisoners first before that. And he was able to, watch his friends do better than him, basically. He saw Killua kill a guy. But he was learning about his friends too along the way. They were, put in like timeout, basically. They couldn't, run around. They couldn't run through anywhere. But he ran through the wall to get to where he needed to go. They had to like break through the wall instead of like taking a tunnel and using the path. They just, broke through the wall. Dug through and got there in time to the next stage. They got to the next stage and they had to steal badges. He had to hunt Hisoka's badge. He was afraid of Hisoka. Hisoka was, a guy who was powerful, who is powerful. He ended up getting Hisoka's badge, and he got his badge taken, but Hisoka gave it back and was like, you get stronger, Gon Freaks was then in the final, stage of the Hunter exams. He had to fight against the Shinobi. I forgot his name, but I'll talk about him too. Don't worry about that. He broke his arm. And Gon was like, you're going to have to kill me, because I'm not giving up. I need to become a hunter. And he just gave up because he was like, I could kill you, but then I'll lose my, eligibility to become a hunter. So, you're playing games with me, boy. So I can't, do what I need to do or what I could do. So then he was, upset because Killua ended up getting disqualified. And then he broke Illumi's arm. Which is Killua's brother. So that's all he did, in a nutshell during season 1. Or like, not season 1, but the Hunter exam arc. Strength is 81, speed 84, durability 80, endurance 82, intelligence 83, experience 80, close skills 84, 85 for his range skills, and a recoup 83. Axe at 85%, and then Gon Freaks, his overall power score is at 82.7 for the beginning of the series. Be cool, call on the corner.